Hey dudes and dudettes, it's me, E.H. Ivins, and this is another edition of the Radical Reset. Today, we're going to talk about the new F word, and it's not fuck. That's the old F word. Okay, so to give you a little background and what brought this all to mind is that this week, a couple days ago, a sports broadcaster by the name of Thom Brennamen, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with Thom Brennamen, he was, until he made his mistake, the play-by-play daily announcer for the Cincinnati Reds. Prior to that, he was the play-by-play for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I happen to live in Phoenix where the Arizona Diamondbacks are, so I'm very familiar with Mr. Brennamen and have watched him for years. He's been doing this for nearly 40 years. His father, Marty Brennamen, is in the Baseball Hall of Fame as a broadcaster, so this is a broadcast family with deep roots in the game and really knows the sport. Okay, so this week he was in Kansas City calling a game between the Reds and the Royals, and they were coming back from commercial break. He didn't realize his microphone was hot, and he said that Kansas City is Fagtown. It took me a while to find this, by the way. I had to search all over the place to actually hear the quote. There are tons of articles. I provided the link below to several of them, but there are tons of articles saying that he said a horrible homophobic slur, but to find out what the fuck the slur was, I was thinking it was going to be something terrible. I found out it was just fag. I had to really search for it, but that's what he said. And if you listen yourself, it's on YouTube. If you listen to it, it's pretty garbled. You have to really try. But that doesn't stop the fucking victimhood police from coming out of the woodwork. The Reds fired him. They called it suspended, call it what you want. But they took him off the air mid-game. They were in the fifth inning. They removed him immediately. Fox News has canceled his football broadcasting contract for the upcoming season. He's destroyed over a quip about Kansas City being Fagtown. And by the way, Kansas City is not Fagtown. San Francisco is Fagtown. Let me share, by the way, let me back up. Let's talk about the word fag for a minute. And I'm going to desensitize you to fag by using it a lot. When I was a kid, and I've shared with you before, I'm 63 years old, we used fag all the time in my family, but I had no idea it meant anything homophobic. In fact, the two members of my family who are gay, my cousin Lee and my cousin Sam, used it too all the time growing up, and they were gay from the beginning. We never had any problem in our family with people coming out because we didn't give a shit in the first place. But we used fag all the time. But we didn't use it to describe gay people. We used it to describe people who were pansies. For example, if you were afraid of spiders, you were a spider fag. If you went fishing with my cousin Marty and I, and you were afraid to bait your hook with a live shrimp, you were a shrimp fag. If you were afraid of heights, you were a height fag. We meant it as pansy. And then as I became traveled, I realized that in England it means cigarette. I mean, the word fag is, in fact, let me just share, a little anecdote with you. Long story short, I used to love to go to San Francisco all the time to go shopping. Why did I love to go to San Francisco all the time to go shopping? Because of gay men. I wanted to go there because gay men, I have found, especially when they work in fine stores around Union Square in San Francisco, California, I hate to make it a blanket statement, but I think it's probably true everywhere, have a terrific sense of fashion and like to look good and are unafraid to express it. So I love being waited on by gay men who help me outfit, because I am not a shopper, I am a buyer. I hate fucking going around and trying on 60,000 fucking things to find out what looks good on me. I'd rather walk in and have a gay guy look at me and go, oh, you just look fabulous in that. Let's just try this thought. No, that doesn't work. The pattern doesn't work with your eye colors, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. And yes, I'm imitating gay people. I almost said imitating fags. Don't you love that? I almost said, well, I was going to say it, but fags call each other fags. Gays call each other fags. Fag is everywhere. Fag is not fuck. Fag is not nigger, okay? And speaking of the N-word, okay, let me share a story with you about Jesse Jackson, who once referred to my people, Jews, and the New York City as Hymie Town. Now, did Jesse Jackson identify himself as an anti-Semite when he used that term? You can Google that. He used Hymie Town, and there was a big stink over it, although he was forgiven for it and moved on afterwards, unlike poor Tom, who's being annihilated because Jesse Jackson did it years ago and Thom Brennamen did it today, and we've become so fucking sensitive. But anyway, the point of the story is I was in Caesar's Palace, and I'm not changing the subject. I was just in Las Vegas gambling, and I decided I was tired of gambling, and what I wanted to do was go take a massage. Now, in those days, in Las Vegas, I don't know what the rules are today, but in those days, if you wanted to take a massage, you had to be massaged by a person of the same gender, which today would be a real trick since we don't even know what fucking gender we are anymore. Some people are this and some people are that. I don't know. I'm not even going to get started on the fucking gender thing. But to make a long story short, in those days, men were men, women were women, and you had to be massaged by a male massage therapist. So I was in the waiting room in the spa at Caesar's Palace, and I was in a robe, and I was drinking my cucumber water, and sure as shit, who sits down next to me in his robe but Jesse Jackson, okay? And I instantly recognized him, and I think he enjoyed being recognized, and we struck up a conversation. I was wearing a mezuzah around my neck with a Star of David. A mezuzah is a religious symbol that Jews wear, inside of which is a little scroll with the watchword of the Jewish faith, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's just a little digression. It says it in Hebrew, by the way, not in English. But to make a long story short, if you see a guy wearing it with a Star of David, that's a Jew. So Jesse saw it right away and knew I was Jewish, but he didn't give a shit. We struck up a conversation. We shot the shit for about 20 minutes till they came in and got us. The point is, he didn't seem to have any problem with me being a Jew, and this was around the same time he made the Hymietown comment, and I really didn't give a shit. I don't judge Jesse Jackson based on one fucking comment made off the cuff. You know, he's not Louis Farrakhan. There are degrees. It's one thing to be softly anti-Semitic. In other words, in every stereotype, there's a little bit of truth. I mean, like, nobody knows more Jewish jokes than me, right? So, like, what's the difference between a Jewish girl and a barracuda? Lipstick. You know, what is a Jewish woman's idea of a perfect home? 5,000 square feet, no kitchens, no bedrooms. What does a French girl say when she's making love? Ooh la la. What does an Italian girl say when she's making love? Mamma mia. What does a Jewish girl say when she's making love? Honey, there's a crack in the ceiling. I think we need to get it fixed. What's a Jewish man's idea of foreplay? 5 hours of begging. And I could go on and on and on. I mean, and there is a grain of truth to all of this. There is no coincidence that I did not marry a Jewish girl. Anyway, by the way, I'm sure there are plenty of delightful Jewish women. I just have, it was my mother was such a fucking nightmare, it ruined me for Jewish women, but I digress. Okay, so back on subject. I didn't judge Jesse Jackson by Hymietown any more than I judged Tom Brennamen by saying fag. There are certain words that, you know, there are no bad words. There are just inappropriate times to use them. For example, nigger, okay? Two black men get together and call each other nigger. I understand that it's nigga and all that kind of I think that's all bullshit. But if two black men, by mutual consent, want to call each other nigger in an appropriate situation, an appropriate time and place, who am I? Personally, I think the word ought to be erased from the English language because it's an ugly word. And there are degrees of bad, you know, there's nigger and there's cunt, and then there's Jaime, and, you know, there's kike and there's Jaime, right? I mean, you know, they're terrible, but it's all just a construct of what we have perceived. They're just words, and and when you say them in private, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily an anti-Semite or anti-black. Look, I won't lie to you. I've told jokes about black people before, and, you know, and black people have told plenty Jew jokes. I mean, but that doesn't make them they're just a time and a place. You don't say it in public. And Tom Brennamen didn't mean to say it in public, but he apologized. He has apologized to the point where I think his gums are bleeding, and it doesn't matter because in the woke culture we live in this world where the thought police go around making sure that we all are thinking and saying the right things, what you can and cannot say, and they're policing everything down to the masks on your face because of COVID, we live in a society of destruction. You can say the most, you know, not to defend Donald Trump, okay? And God knows I am no fan of Donald Trump. But when he said in that RV to Billy Bush, you know, I'm a celebrity and that means I could grab a woman by the pussy, there's a certain truth to that. And he didn't say it in public. He said it in a private locker room kind of conversation between two men. And it was completely appropriate, and believe it or not, that was an appropriate comment between two men. We've all said gross shit, guys. And if you have never said a gross thing about a woman to another man, well, you're a fag, okay? I mean, and I mean that as you're a homosexual. And I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying that too, you know? But the truth is, you know, for example, I have a child that works in the show business industry, and he'll tell you right now, gay guys can be fucking vicious. You know, in Hollywood, you work around a lot of homosexuals. And there are a lot of homosexual stereotypes that are true. If you don't think that's true, watch Modern Family and Cam vamp it up. I mean, look, the point I'm making is we all say things in private that are not necessarily indicative of how we feel really. Okay, we just say them in the moment. You know, we're in a group of people, maybe we smoked a little pot, maybe we drank a little beer, maybe it's just a casual moment, and we just say things. But if we have to be held accountable for every fucking thing that comes out of our mouth, it's going to squelch all the good things that might come out of our mouth as we try to analyze what the fuck it is that we're saying and who we might offend and what word is offensive. I mean, a fag is an offensive word in the United States, but it's a cigarette butt in England. I mean, and nobody says fag more than gay guys. I mean, trust me, as a guy who's been shopping in San Francisco for years, it's a big word. And So what? So what? Where have we gotten to a point in our society where we're so fucking sensitive? Look, we need to raise our children to understand there is no such thing as hate speech, and there is no such thing as a bad word. There is only such thing as the wrong time and place to say it. And you are never going to convert a bigot by monitoring what they say. In fact, all you're going to do is make them into a bigger bigot because they're going to resent. I promise you, when this all dies down and Thom Brennamen is sitting in his living room, and I hope he has a lot of money saved up because his career is fucking ruined, and he's thinking to himself what's happened. He's not going to like homosexuals or gays any better than he did before if he was a homophobe, because now they've destroyed his fucking life. He could easily look at it that way. Now, I realize that it was not a gay conspiracy to destroy Thom Brennamen's life, and I understand that the woke come in every flavor, and there are people that troll around all day long looking for offense. But the fact of the matter is, lighten the fuck up. Grow a thick skin. You know, my ex-father-in-law, God rest his soul, he since passed away, Max. The very first time I met him, we were sitting at the dining room table in Wellman, Iowa, a town of 800 people, so he didn't know a hell of a lot of fucking Jews, okay? And he made a comment akin to basically he had bought a product but had managed to Jew them down. Now, I caught it, but I let it go. Why did I let it go? Because it didn't fucking matter. Max wasn't an anti-Semite. He was thrilled with me as a son-in-law. He was thrilled with me to be with his daughter. He just grew up saying Jew them down. It was just something that the white people in Lutheran, Midwestern Iowa say. And you know what? I know people say Jew them down. I'll bet you've said Jew them down. And you know what? I don't think that makes you an anti-Semite. In fact, I'll tell you a little truth. There's a shred of truth to that fucking stereotype, because I'm going to tell you something. You put a group of Jews together, if one of them has just bought something, whatever it might be, every other Jew in that room could have gotten a better deal. For example, the other day, I bought a Subaru Crosstrek. By the way, great fucking car. Now, this Subaru Crosstrek, I spent a certain amount of money for. They're not particularly expensive cars, low 20s, okay? But I promise you that if I share this news with any of my Jewish friends, I'm going to get, gee, you should have called me. I could have gotten you a better deal. Because Jews know we can Jew it down. You know, there's a joke that circulates among Jews that says, why did God invent Gentiles? Because somebody had to pay retail. I mean, you know, we pride ourselves. So why would I be offended to hear somebody say Jew them down? And the answer is, I'm not. You know what? If you want to Jew them down, baby. And if you want to think that's a characteristic of Jews, I own it. I am a great bargainer. I mean, you ought to see me in Mexico, for Christ's sake. Anyway, that's another story. I digress. The point is, in stereotypes, there are always little seeds of truth. For example, how many jokes have been told about Asians driving? Now, somehow it's still okay to tell jokes about Asians because they're overachievers. I'm probably the same way it's okay to tell certain kinds of Jewish jokes. So they get picked on, and so far the woke haven't gone after that. But the truth of the matter is, if you live in Los Angeles, you've told lots of jokes about Asians who can't drive. And if you think that's not true, the next time you're in the LA area, I want you to take a drive out to the Palo Verde Peninsula, where lots of Asian people seem to live, and check out how many trash cans are knocked over by crazy women Asian drivers. I'm not joking around. They can't see shit. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a lack of peripheral vision. I don't know if it's a lack of caring. I don't know if it's a lack of training. I don't know what the fuck it is. But whatever it is, there's a shred of truth to that fucking stereotype. Just like there's a truth, you know, my youngest son played competitive chess for years, and I'm going to tell you something. There's something true about, you know, tiger moms and Asian mothers who push their kids relentlessly. Go into the chess world, you'll see it. And it isn't just Asian moms from China and Korea and Japan. It's also Asians, as in Indians, who also push their kids relentlessly. I'll just never forget the first time Jillian won a tournament, and one of the Indian fathers came over and said to me, "Oh, your life is over now." Oh, there's a bug flying around me. "Your life is over now. You are going to be totally interrupted in the chess and blah, 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 blah." And you know what? That's great. And that little accent I used, you know, now, for example, Hank Azaria, who used to voice Abu on The Simpsons, doesn't voice that anymore because somehow talking like this was viewed to be incorrect. But go to an Indian restaurant and tell me they don't talk like that. Come on, loosen the fuck up. I have enormous respect for Indians. Those of you who have watched my videos, I've touted India over and over again as the real coming country, not China, because they're a real democracy and they're a terrific country. But anyway, the point of the matter is, I'm not here trying to justify my feelings on Indians, but if I make a little fun using an Indian accent, I've used that around Indians. They have a good laugh about it. At least I think so. I mean, if you're Indian and are offended by that, please, you know, comment below. But if you are offended by that, fuck you. I mean, look, we all have these little things. So that Thom Brennamen said Kansas City is Fagtown off the air. What? Why is that a fucking death sentence to his fucking career? Could he not just apologize? You know, I would have said, look, yeah, I said it. I'm sorry I said it. I thought I was in private. It's not something, I'm not a homophobe, but if you believe that I am, then believe that I am, but fuck you. You know, I mean, in fact, if I were Thom Brennamen now that his career is ruined and Fox has canceled him off of football and the Cincinnati Reds have taken him off of baseball and he's done, I'd tell them all to go fuck you. I'd become a darling of libertarians. Here's a career suggestion, Tom. Go seek out libertarians who believe in free speech and believe that there's no such thing as hate speech and believe that the only thing there is the appropriate time and place to say it. I've taught the same thing to my children, okay? I teach, now for example, on this podcast, I use fuck a lot. You know that. I use fuck, I've said nigger, I've said cunt, I've said kike, I've said hiney, I've said all kinds of words but this podcast is labeled as explicit. So this is an appropriate form for me to use those words. But I'm starting another podcast right now. It's called The Dad You Wish You Had. It's about getting advice from a great father, and I am a great father. I mean, that's braggy, but it's true. I'll be humble about certain things, but false modesty is just that, false. So I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a great father. I've raised 4 great children. Even their friends call me their second father, and I've decided to basically sell my advice. When I say sell, it's free to everybody who watches the podcast, but I'm hoping to get a big following. Anyway, the point is, that will not be an explicit podcast. I will never say the word nigger or the word kike or the word fuck or the word cunt or anything like it on that fucking podcast, because that is not the forum, neither the time nor the place when I'm going to be possibly talking to children and giving them advice, or certainly teenagers. And while I'm advising them on what to do with their life, I'm not going to say, give that fucking guy up, or, don't listen to that cunt. I mean, that's just not the time or the place for it. It's inappropriate, but there are times and places where those words are appropriate. Let's not kid each other. And those times and places are private. And when you're private, you should have privacy. And the same people annihilating Thom Brennamen right now are probably mostly Democrats and mostly pro-choice. And what does pro-choice rest on? It rests on the ruling Roe v. Wade. And what does Roe v. Wade rest on? The right to privacy that is not in the Constitution but is implied, and I agree it is implied in the Constitution. You have a right to your private thoughts and sayings, and when you say something with somebody else that's there who's not going to be offended, and you're accidentally overheard one way or another, whether it's by a live microphone or just people at the next table, and they get all offended, your response should be, fuck you. This was not a conversation I was trying to include you on. This was not an appropriate time or place. So as I sat there in Caesar's Palace, Jesse Jackson didn't call me a Jaime. That would have been inappropriate, any more than I would have called him a nigger. By the way, I've never called a black guy a nigger in my life, and I'm not going to start now. But the point is, and that is a bigoted statement. Let's not kid each other. White guys calling black guys niggers. I heard it in prison, but you don't hear it in the street. It's an inappropriate word to be used at any time except among 2 black people if they consent to it. And even then, I think it's kind of inappropriate. But that's just my opinion. And there are millions of black people who are going to tell me it's none of your fucking business, and which I accept. You're right. Okay, it's your word. Do with it what you want. I'm not going to use it in public conversation any more than I'm going to use fag. Look, when I was a kid, as I told you, fag just meant you were a pansy. If you didn't like to bait your hook, like I said, you were a shrimp fag, or a worm fag, or a mullet fag. If you didn't like bugs, you're a bug fag. It didn't mean gay. We never even thought about it as gay. There's a time and a place. Now, it would have been inappropriate for me to seek out, for example, my cousin Sammy and say, you're such a faggot. But I wouldn't have even known to do that. It just wasn't in our, for years and years. I don't know if you guys know this, and I'm not going off subject. Jewish people love Chinese food. I mean, if you want to find who's Jewish in the town you live in, go to a Chinese restaurant on Christmas Day. The Chinese don't shut it down because they're not Christians by and large, and the Jews don't observe Christmas, obviously, because we don't accept Jesus Christ as a savior. So basically, Jews are looking for a place to go out, and we love Chinese food. We love Chinese food. There's a running joke in Judaism, I think it's told by a comedian named Rabbi Alper or something like that, who says that, the Jewish religion is 6,000 years old, the Chinese culture is 4,000 years old, which means we had to suffer for 2,000 years before we could find good Chinese. And it's the truth. Well, the point of the matter is, our favorite restaurant growing up was the Tea Garden restaurant in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My family and I, every single week, My parents would get me and my sister, we'd meet with my Aunt Madeline and her children and grandchildren, and we'd all go to the Chinese restaurant, the tea garden for Chinese food. And do you know what we called the tea garden? The Chinks. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I had no idea chink was a negative word. I thought the name of the restaurant was the Chinks. I swear to God. That's how kids think. Until they know a word is inappropriate. And you only have to call attention to a word to make it inappropriate. In other words, it really was nothing. I didn't call the people working there Chinks. I didn't know that was a word for Chinese people. I didn't know it was a pejorative term. And when I learned that it was, I stopped using it because I'm an intelligent, reasonable person. But if I accidentally was telling the story about going to the Chinks as a kid, and somebody overheard me at the next table, and I was a highly successful public figure, which I am not yet, but I hope to be, and someone overheard it and turned me in for it, I'd say, fuck you. You know what? I didn't mean anything by it. It was just a conversation privately between two people with me sharing an old story about when I was a kid back in the 1960s when people used words like that all the fucking time. There's a time and a place. There's appropriate and there's inappropriate, but there is no hate speech and there are no bad words. There's just the wrong time to use it. And instead of policing everybody's thoughts and labeling everybody based on one fucking word, I mean, you've heard me say the word nigger how many times today? Do you think I don't like black people? I'm not going to get into it with you, but that's just bullshit. Anyone who really knows me, that's nonsense. And do you think because I said chink that I have a problem with Chinese people? Not a fucking problem. But I'm not going to go through all this down by a whole fucking list. If you choose to judge me over one fucking word, fuck you, you intolerant son of a bitch. That's what you are. You are intolerant if you can't let it go. Let it go. Instead of chastising people for a fucking mistake, we should be chastising the people chastising them. We should be calling them intolerant bigots because they don't accept that human beings are human beings. And sometimes human beings make mistakes. And those mistakes should not be a death sentence on their whole fucking career because they said some word out loud in a place that was overheard and therefore potentially inappropriate. I think I've made my point, and that's all I'm going to say today. Okay, so for those of you who want to learn more about my points, please pick up your free copy of The Radical Reset. It is yours free to download if you are a Prime member in the Kindle Lending Library, or you can pick up this nifty paperback version if you prefer to read for a nominal charge. Also, while you're over there, do me a favor, click on my name and go to my author's page. I actually have 3 books out now, but the other 2 are fiction. One is called The Terrarium, which is a coming-of-age story that takes place in Pittsburgh growing up of a young boy. It's semi-autobiographical, but most of it is fiction, to be perfectly honest. But the point of the story it was a time when things were changing. It is appropriate to this broadcast right now. In fact, Mr. Producer, if you could put a picture of the terrarium up on the screen, I'd be really appreciative. And the terrarium is all about a young boy who learns about when is the right time and place, and he learns about homophobia, he learns about sexuality, he learns about racism, he learns about all kinds of things in the 60s, which were a time of great tumult. And by the way, the story is easy to read and really funny. And while there are no car chases and there are no bombs going off and nobody gets killed, well, one person sort of kind of gets killed. But anyway, you'll see. You'll enjoy the story. And it's really a novella. It's really just like around 200 pages. It's a short read. You can read it in a day if you put your mind to it, and you will. It'll grab you. It'll suck you in. And the other book that I have out is called The Grand Master. And The Grand Master is a novel that I wrote while I was in prison, but it is strangely predictive of what's going on now. If you want to read a great story with lots of murder and mayhem and drugs and violence and all kinds of other good shit and political intrigue, read The Grand Master. You will love it. Again, all 3 of these books are free for you to download as in the Kindle Lending Library if you're a Prime member, or you can pick up a paperback copy. Either way, whatever makes you happy. Also, make sure that you click on the subscriber button if you haven't already, on the notification button so you know when I put up another one of these videos, which, by the way, I do twice a week, and go to antipolitism.org and join the movement, because, my friends, antipolitism is the only hope for our country and culture. Read the book, you'll understand why. And that's all I have to say for you today. I want to thank you very, very much for joining me. And until next time, this is E.H. Ivins, signing off.